Chauvin guilty on all charges. What are your thoughts? I'm kinda surprised. I thought they'd nail him for manslaughter and third-degree murder, but I didn't think they'd get second-degree murder to stick. The second-degree murder is an unintentional second-degree murder charge. MN has some weird second-degree murder statutes. I was confused as well until read into it. It's basically a felony murder charge where if someone died while you were committing a felony you can be charged with murder. That makes a lot more sense. I haven't been following the case closely because people have been going absolutely bonkers. When I heard he was charged with second-degree murder I was like, ooh, no way. But unintentional murder is still kind of weird. That's what manslaughter is, isn't it? Second-degree murder in MN is unintentional murder because it does not require intent to kill. As long as the prosecution can prove that there was intent to commit a felony, and someone died as a result of that felony, then that satisfies the criteria. But what felony was he committing other than the murder one they were trying him for? I believe it was felony assault. Wouldn't that be the case for all homicides? In most states, you can't use the underlying assault as the other felony. MN is an unusual state. Genuinely honest legal question here. How do you get charged for second and third degree murder and manslaughter? I always thought since they're all different levels you'd pick the one that applies. Basically my question is why is manslaughter even there when second degree is much worse anyway, and why still use all three and convict on all three? Here's my response to another asking the same question. 2020 MN Statute 609.19, Subdivision 2, Clause 1, Chauvin was accused convicted of causing Floyd death while committing felony assault, constituting second-degree murder in MN. Likewise, third-degree murder in MN is stipulated when death follows an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind, without regard for human life. 2020 MN Statute 609.205, Clause 1, Chauvin was accused convicted of causing Floyd's death via culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, and consciously taking chances causing death or great bodily harm to another, constituting second-degree manslaughter in MN. Nothing says that these charges are mutually exclusive, and one can see that the statutes overlap in their applicability to Floyd's death. I presume the overlapping is acknowledged by applying concurrent sentences, rather than cumulative ones. Thank you for an actual answer based on statute. I'm curious what comments the mods are deleting. Edit. I had this account for over a year and this comment tripled my karma LMFAO, thank y'all smile. I was wondering the same exact thing. I was following some arguments and now the original comment is gone. I posted in another comment but here you go. In the URL type removed it in place of Reddit and hit enter. You'll be able to see all the original undeleted content. Removed it doesn't work anymore, use revedit. Works for me. Thinking about how we all watched him murder George with our own eyes and we were still anxious about the verdict. From a POV outside of the States, emo it makes no difference unless major changes are actually being reinforced and made. As someone inside of the States, I agree. This is a positive step of accountability, but unless more are held accountable and broad changes are made, he will be a pariah. A sacrificial lamb. And little else. As someone with one foot in the US and foot out, I agree somewhat. I think it gives us positive reinforcement that when things like this happen justice will be served. Cops now know that they can't get away with stuff like they used to. Or that things are certainly changing. As someone with one foot in the US and foot out, you shake it all about? Maybe do a little hokey pokey? And turn yourself around? Now that's what I'm all about. Keep filming the police people. It was because of Darnella Frazier filming that brought police brutality to the public stage and started many calls for police reform. There also needs to be a call to make body cam videos more accessible to the public. It's ridiculously difficult to obtain police body camera footage of your own arrest. The only reason this case got any attention was because an onlooker filmed the tragedy on her phone. It forced the department's hand, and made them release the police footage, and even that high profile of a case took far too long to do so. What's the point of body cam footage on police when Therese miles of red tape to view it? Citizens should be allowed full access to any and all footage whenever they please. Refusing to do so only means Therese something to hide. Edit, I was being overly broad in regards to any and all footage. Of course, individual privacy is extremely important, and should be properly worked in. Also, in many places there's basically no consequences for turning off a body camera, not to mention experiencing malfunctions and/or losing footage. If not the officers, then the department agency should be held accountable. Yep, turning the cam off should be tampering with evidence. If anything happens while it's off, you're liable for the outcome. As someone who agrees with nearly everything in this specific parent thread, something I'm still trying to figure out: what happens if a body cam genuinely malfunctions? There are numerous times it's clearly being used as an excuse, but there have to be times that it actually happens. Holding the officer accountable would potentially be a massive miscarriage of justice in the rare instance that includes both a malfunction plus issues during that malfunction. I absolutely believe the better to have 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent be wrongly convicted applies to all residents of the country. I can't think of a way to fully account for that. Note, I'm not saying that counters the need for universal body cams, and the commenter above you makes an interesting point about department culpability instead. These days, body cam footage is so vital to criminal cases that the maintenance and upkeep of body cams ought to be held to a much higher standard. Rather than asking what if a body cam malfunctions or when will this body cam malfunction, we should treat body cams as devices that should never malfunction, and inspect every issue and missing footage with extreme diligence and thoroughness. A firefighter wouldn't go to work with a faulty hose. A pilot wouldn't fly a plane with faulty controls. Your profession's tool should never have a chance to malfunction. For a police officer, this ought to be your gun and your body cam. The fireman's hose brings up a solid point. If a fireman's hose fails, release multiple other firemen there to continue to fight the fire. If all of their hoses fail, something else is going on. I think that the turning of his own department, and chief, against him in the case is indicative that Chauvin's on-camera case was such a difficult thing to defend that he was to become a sacrificial lamb in a sense. In order to defend the existing police establishment without significant change, they had to make a show of holding an officer accountable for crime. In this sense, I believe Chauvin is being used to diffuse public anger because he would have been a very hard case to justify and the people's discontent was reaching a boiling point. I'd love to hear fellow Redditors' theories on this. I wouldn't be surprised if their department is much more hostile to people with cameras. The guy who filmed Gardner's death spent time in prison for it and was harassed by police. They will continue to take retribution on people who try to hold them accountable. Harass is understating things a bit. They tortured him and tried to poison him a few times. He was a bad cop and deserved it. Hopefully this will give other bad cops a reason to pause and wonder if they will be the next Chauvin. Might stop them from doing something reckless. Smartphones might be the cause of people not interacting face to face but are a brilliant way of capturing injustices. Just imagine if this happened to Floyd on the side of a remote rural road at night instead. This case doesn't get nearly as much attention. The problem is that police abuse without witnesses already happens. This is why body cams should be standard. It protects the public and honest cops. Except they can be turned off. That needs to be fixed. Anything that happens when a cop doesn't have their camera on should be prosecuted as if the cop was a civilian. If a crime happens, turning it off should count as tampering with evidence. Turning it off should just count as tampering with evidence, period. There is no reason a police officer should even be able to turn it off. They are public servants and their actions should be public record. He deserved to be convicted, but I don't have the same joy and excitement a lot of people seem to have about it. Shitty situation top to bottom and I don't find anything happy about it. There is no joy in this. Nor is there really any hope. There is some sort of relief, like crying silently after things got too hard to keep in. There are thousands more like him in the world, but for one person there was justice. It was an exhausting battle for it, especially when it was clear that what was done was wrong, and now this one battle has ended but we're still in a war for change. If someone has a history of concussions and I hit them in the head with a baseball bat and kill them, I don't get to say they died because of their history of concussions. I'm glad the jury realized that. I mean, is the implication there that anyone would have survived a knee against their neck for 9 minutes? I wouldn't roll that dice. The defense was ridiculous. To be fair to the defense attorney, That was the best defense you have when there's a 10-minute video of your client committing murder that the entire world saw. The defense just needs to put enough doubt in one juror's head.